Hey, good afternoon, guys. It's Dave Duford here at Final Expense Agent Mentor, where I help agents like you succeed in the final expense in insurance business. As you can say, as you can hear, if you watch my videos commonly, I'm a little bit under the weather, but again, I'm dedicated to putting these videos on for you. And I figured it'd be a good time to catch up with some reading. One of my commitments I made at the beginning of the year was to read a book a week. And usually, as if you haven't seen already, I usually review a book every week or every other week. And I'm about 5 or 6 books behind that I've completed or almost completed that I haven't yet discussed. So what I'm going to use in today's video is just more or less of a review of the video or the books that I've read and kind of give you a quick synopsis of how each book is and what the major one takeaway that I had out of the book. I'm going to save my favorite books for last. These are, in fact, they actually are the most controversial, I'd say. But I think some of the value out of reading those books is pretty good. So let's get started. By the way, if you find any interest in these books, I've got links if you want to buy them below. They're affiliate links. Yes, they do pay me. If you don't want to click on them, just go to Amazon and search at Amazon. Either way is fine with me. So let's start with the first one. So this is kind of an interesting book. This is called The Adjuster's Life by Douglas Sperling, From Resume to Payday. I've tried hard to get this guy to do an interview with me, but not exactly insurance sales. But as you can tell by the picture on this book, it's a giant hurricane. And the concept of the book is to teach Doug's approach to not recruiting, but getting into or getting recruited into the adjuster's business. And he describes how to find jobs, how to sit for the test, how to run through a proper estimate and adjusting session. It's really just a beginner's guide to the adjusting business. Pretty interesting. I had a guy that I know that told me after, I think it was the last hurricane that hit Houston, that there was so much damage done, but there's always a huge cattle call to adjusters to come down and just start working through these damage estimates. And the money is incredible. They were talking $500 a day. You know, you're working a grind the entire time. And the adjusting claims come in that you got to handle. But it's something where it's either you're on and you're working hard for a continued period of time and you got to drop everything to do it. And then you've got a lot of time off where you don't do much of anything. So it's kind of as the damage comes in is kind of how you get involved in this business. So it's a good read. It's a quick read. If this is the kind of business model that interests you, you're not really selling insurance. You're just working in the insurance business, but on the claims side. And my understanding is the money's pretty good. Okay, so more of the insurance sales books. This is Carlebach, Selling is Simple. Carlebach, a little bit about him. He was the owner and controlling shareholder of San Francisco Life Insurance Company. He is deceased. But his book is really good. He's got one other book that I'm going to read. I think it's How He Made $12 million in insurance sales in a year. It's years and years, decades old. But it's a good read. It's a fast read. It takes him through his sales presentation process, how he prospects. One tactic I'll share with you I learned from this is what he does to help boost his average case size is on policy delivery. He shows a case size that has a bigger face amount than the one originally posed. So he may have gotten agreement on a $500,000 term insurance plan, but when he delivers a case, he gets a sheet signed to where the client can opt to select a quarter or 3/4 of a million or $1 million policy. So without any additional paperwork. So it's a way to attempt to boost up the sale, to make more of the sale upon the delivery. Maybe when somebody gets comfortable with the idea of buying it and then they say, oh, it's only 30, 45, $50 more. That's not that bad. You know, it has less of an impact now that they've already been sold on buying the product. So I thought that was good. Definitely pick this up. It's worth a read. This one was a little bit interesting. This is called A Touch of Larceny. And it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek title, as you can say. A guy named Kent Larson. Interesting guy. He sold business men primarily in the construction business, as I understood it. And he just talks about some of the silliness of the business when it comes to his view on conventions. He doesn't like conventions. He thinks meetings are a waste of time. He's kind of the Lone Ranger type of personality. What did he talk about in this book that was particularly interesting? I'm trying to think. There was one. Oh, I found interesting that he was a big advocate of working with a carrier that wasn't necessarily the lowest price, but would be higher priced in general, but also would allow for flexibility with, what we would call high risk cases. And so he found it to be of benefit in his primary business to focus on one carrier. Now, this is back in the captive days. I think this was written in the early 80s, and where most guys were still with one company as opposed to a variety of them. So his standpoint was, I'll give up some price competitiveness for the sake of being able to write more people and accept more people as a whole, which, hey, in this business, you can run your business however you want to. I'm all for price competitiveness. Of course, it's a different animal when you're talking about business insurance than, say, final expense, because certainly there's more value driven with whatever product you're selling in that context versus final expense, which is pretty homogenous. So, but a tactic that's interesting to work with a company that will allow more people to be accepted, but in sacrifice giving up some money or giving up some price competitiveness. Last insurance book here, well, second to last one. This one is Saturday Always Comes by Burt Meisel, one of the 3 or 4 books he wrote. The key takeaway here, and I use this on a client, is writing and the importance of keeping agendas as a sales tactic. So Meisel sold to business owners, and he would find that using an agenda would allow for a proper construct to control the meeting, but then also propose insurance in a way and in a direction as how he wanted to. There was one particular point in the book, the specifics escape me, but the construct of the agenda, of course, precipitated the direction in the sales call that he wanted it to go to. So he used it as a control mechanism, of which business people appreciate. Everybody supports the concept of agendas and meetings anyway, and it helped as a sales tactic. I used it on a client of mine the other day, and it was helpful. And what I found out, as a final expense person, we're one trick pony. We go in and close the deal. There's no agenda set. But these larger clients, like this particular client was very appreciative of knowing what to expect and what order. And there was a lot of confusion because there's a lot of policies we were working through that I have on her. And so this kind of helped streamline things. So definitely pick this up. Anything by Burt Meisel, guys, is great. Look on Amazon. You may have to go on eBay, mdrt.org, the store. Bookstore that they've got over there has a lot of his stuff. Buy everything that he's written. He's a great writer too. He's probably one of the, he's got just a great writing style. He's very funny and additional to be very helpful as well. We need old guys like that around. It's too bad that that kind of generation of insurance agents has kind of gone to the wayside. Last 2 books here. This one I found particularly good. If you guys know buy term and invest the difference, or as other people say, buy term and blow the difference on something else, not an investment. This is the entire book from A.L. Williams' humble beginnings as a South Georgia football coach and how he built an incredible life insurance company and totally shook the insurance business to its core. I was watching a video the other day by a guy named John Savage, talking about A.L. Williams and buy term and invest the difference concept. And it's amazing because at the height of A.L. Williams, before Primerica bought him out, A.L. Williams recruited, or had about 290,000 recruits on a part-time basis. And compare that to in 2005, I believe, when this book was written, Primerica only had 100,000 recruits, which is incredible. I mean, they had literally a third of the recruits that they used to. But it's a really great story of what I would consider a decent man and his conviction, in fact, what he called his crusade against what he called trash value life insurance. He did not like whole life insurance. His father passed away. His mother only had, I think, a $15,000 whole life. He discovered that there was all this term insurance out there that would have been sold but wasn't, because in his opinion it just wasn't economical to the selling agent. And whatever you think about the buy term and sell the difference or invest the difference concept is beside the point. It's an interesting story from rags to riches and taking a company to its heights, and certainly A.L. Williams kind of have that evangelist demeanor to his prowess as a motivator. And it's really a great book. I highly recommend it, especially just seeing how the insurance industry fought it tremendously, especially against replacements. Many DOIs, which A.L. Williams accused of basically having the insurance companies in their back pocket, fought tooth and nail against A.L. Williams' tactic of replacing insurance. It's pretty interesting. Now, my final book here, which I'm just about finished with, but I figured I'd share it with you since I'm doing a book review. I wanted to show you this one, Trump, The Art of the Deal. Man, I am telling you guys, this is an excellent book. I don't care if you love Trump. I don't care if you hate him. Whatever you think about Trump, this book is just incredible because it gets inside of the mind of our president and what he did to make deals happen in the 70s and the 80s. He talked about a couple of deals. For example, the Trump Tower deal was excellent. He talked about when he had to get rid of tenants out of one of his buildings in the process of doing that, and how he opened up Trump Castle when he took over from Conrad Hilton's son. It was a really great read. It's again, I'm almost done with it, but it's really great. Just I think as a Trump person myself, a Trump supporter, and this is kind of besides the normal insurance sales talk, but it's amazing how much of Trump's voice comes out in this and his perspective on topics that he's talked about, like the trade deficit and unfair trade practices, and really just his overall mentality. This guy is not crazy. He is not a buffoon. He's very tactical. Some people believe Trump plays what we call 4D chess, and he's thinking several steps ahead. And if you read his books, I guess that's my point, you really get inside of the mind of Trump and see what he thinks and what processes he goes through. And this was written back in the late 80s, which leaves much of his life, obviously, unspoken of up to this point. And this is the only book of Trump's I've read. I listened to a DVD of his once, or a CD at once, but it was an abridged version. But definitely worth picking up, because one of Trump's things that he speaks about is thinking big and thinking of the big possibilities that you can do to, if you're living, you might as well think big. Great book, highly recommended, if only for the idea of seeing what someone comes from his beginnings to success in the fight that he takes to get it there in one of the most competitive fields ever, which would be New York City real estate. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Hey Ken, how you doing? I've never read any of Grant's stuff. I'll be completely honest with you. I just never had any appeal to the guy's approach. I've heard lots of good stuff, and don't get me wrong, I'm not making any sort of passing judgment in the sense of, I just don't know anything about the guy. Now, I grew up reading Brian Tracy. I grew up reading Dan Kennedy. Brian Tracy, of course, is more of my style. He's very calm and relaxed, Canadian guy, nice guy. And then Dan Kennedy is more in the marketing vein of things. And sales too. Marketing is just sales and print after all. But I always love reading Dan Kennedy stuff. I'm trying to think if I got any other stuff that I really like. I never really got on board with Grant. I think I really just, I don't know. It never really appealed to me. I'm sure his stuff is good though. But Brian Tracy, if you ever read any of his stuff, it's excellent as well. Highly recommended. I'm trying to think of some other sales guys. I can't think of any in particular. If you like final expense sales, buy my book. All right, guys. Gary V, I love Dan Kennedy too. Gary V, only thing I've seen of Gary is the short clips on Facebook. And the thing I like about Gary, I've never read any of his books. Never read any of his books. I've almost gotten to the point. But I like Gary because he doesn't bullshit. I think one of the things that bugs the hell out of me when it comes to these gurus and their motivational stuff and sales training tactics is it doesn't take into account what it really takes to be successful, which is hard work and commitment, and basically you keeping that commitment while everybody else is going to doubt you to the point of you're all alone. And Gary talks about how important it was to work through his 20s. I think he owned a vineyard with his father or family, and how he sacrificed his 20s while his friends went out and partied, and he worked his ass off. And that's the kind of stuff I like to hear, because that's the truth. Success is not easy. It's a tough choice, and it's a commitment. I've never read any of Earl Nightingale stuff, Dave. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, Zig. Did Brian sell insurance? I didn't know that. Brian Tracy sold insurance. That's interesting. Hey, Richard, how you doing? Yeah, I've actually heard Sandler's Institute. Sandler training is very much like the way I teach my sales approach, very question-based. I've never actually looked into Sandler training. I've just had multiple people say, hey, have you ever done that? Because your stuff is very similar to that. Kind of that low-key, hands-off, non-aggression type approach to selling. I tell you what I got coming up, though. I've got Frank Becker's How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success. There's another book. I've got W. Clement Stone's book, The Success System That Never Fails. That's next on the list, I think, in a couple weeks when I read that. I've got a bunch of stuff I haven't yet got to get to. I've got a pile of books down here. Yeah, there's a couple left to go. But yeah, I didn't know that about Zig. That's interesting. Yeah, okay, I'll look at Sandler's then. I appreciate the recommendation, Dave. And yeah, I didn't know Brian Tracy sold insurance. That's interesting. Same with Zig. I thought Zig was just a pot and pan guy, and he spoke at Mary Kay or whatever. But okay, very cool. Thanks for the recommendations, guys. What you'll find is once you start reading a lot of these books, you start running out of ideas, especially if your focus is just on sales training. I feel like I've read, more than half of the available sales training books that are from the legends, I guess you could say. I'm sure there's a lot of others out there. Okay, so Brian was more of a financial guy. Okay, I got you. But okay, same thing basically. The one thing I'll leave you guys with is just a final thought here. I think every one of you guys listening, if you haven't already, is you need to commit to the same process that I have. Read a book a week. The saying, they say, whoever they is, says that the top executives all read one book a week. And I don't know why it's like, geez, who said that? Tony Gordon, another book I just reviewed the other week. His magic number, there was a magic number in insurance sales, and it's 15 appointments a week. If you can keep 15 appointments a week, the money follows. Less than that, questionable. Possible, but questionable. But what I have found is that keeping up with steady reading, which really accounts to about maybe 30 minutes to an hour a day, you can find that, you can make it work. I got on the treadmill this morning for an hour, kind of under the weather, walked, and I pulled up The Art of the Deal and read about 40 pages. You can find time to multitask and make this happen. And I can tell you, man, it has really had a huge effect, because what I'm doing is I'm surrounding myself with people who are successful. I'm learning what they have done to become successful, especially A.L. Williams' story and Trump's story. There's a lot of, you'll start to see veins and threads of similarities between each of these people in completely different businesses. And you start to see that success really leaves tracks. It leaves clues. It's predictable. There's a certain approach, a method, a system. And you start to just adapt it because you're constantly exposing yourself to these ideas. And even if, look, I'm reading a bunch of insurance sales books from guys who sell to business owners. I don't sell business owners, but it doesn't matter because I get exposed to the top people in this business. My mind becomes more creative. I'm able to adapt things that I hear from them, and even in my own business. And so it's like Tony Robbins says, the best things to read are one of the best types of books to read are biographies. And the more you can do that stuff, it's amazing. You start seeing a lot of the similarities and connections. So I would highly recommend you guys commit yourself to a book a week. We're talking 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I don't watch TV. It's probably the reason why I don't. The Walking Dead, I'll just watch The Walking Dead. Maybe reruns of Star Trek of The Next Generation. That is worth an occasional view if you're a nerd like I am. But other than that, I'm reading books at the end of the day when I'm on the treadmill in the morning. And it's so much better, and it has so much more of an impact than watching television and doing other activities that just basically don't do anything for you. And of course, you already know all this stuff. I'm just reminding you how important this stuff is. It's just to constantly be learning and involving yourself in training. And yes, there you go. Yes, The Walking Dead. Yes, I'm almost gave up on it. I thought the last episode was pretty good though. But hey, it's been on for 9 seasons. I mean, how many shows last 9 seasons that can capture the audience like that does? I mean, it's still. I think they said it took away from something. I think it was the Grammys. I don't know, but like it's just the draw of that show is still great. So, anyways, other than that, guys, I'm done blabbering on here. I hope you guys enjoyed the book recommendations. Please pick yourself up some of these. Get yourself on a once-a-week diet of reading books, no matter what it is. For enjoyment, pleasure, certainly for training, it's all going to have a positive impact on you. I've watched them all. I'm completely up to date. All right, guys. Nice to see you guys and talk to you. We'll see you next time, okay?